Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear viewers. Welcome to Women Today. My name is Husna Rahman, and on tonight's show we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is menopause. This is a key life event that women experience, and fortunately with advancements in medicine and biological sciences, there has been a better understanding on menopause. However, there are also still some myths surrounding it. And tonight we'll be looking at separating those myths from facts. Joining us tonight, we have got two prominent guests who will be joining us online. We have got our first guest, Dr. Anwara Ali, MBE, who is chairman of East End Health Network and GP partner at Spitalfields Practice. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ali, and welcome to our show.
TV1 viewers, Assalamu alaikum, Shab Dashdu.
It's lovely to have you on our show. Thank you very much. And another guest who's joining us online is Sister Aamilah Begum Shajna, who is a menopause coach. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Aamilah. Thank you for joining us on our show tonight.
Wa alaikum assalam, Husna, and to all the viewers of TV1, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you both for your time. So I'd like to start, let's start with Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, if you could please explain to us what actually is the menopause and what would you say are the signs of it?
So menopause is the stage in a woman's life which occurs between 45 to 55. In some women, it can occur earlier. And the symptoms that women get are hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, aches and pains, mood swings. And it's something that most women don't seek any help for and get sort of secondhand information from friends, family, parents. And, we don't know much about it because it's not discussed. And there's quite a lot of taboo around it as well, because women also, when this change of life happens, they feel that I'm losing my, my beauty, my womanhood, coupled with all the actual symptoms. It is a very, very difficult time in a woman's life. And, the start of that cycle starts at menarche, the age of sort of 12 and 16 when women get their first periods. Again, it's a very testing time for young women who, girls going to school. So I'm really glad that you've actually decided to talk about this topic so that we can increase the awareness. And there are, treatments out there that women can have. And again, there's quite a lot of misinformation out there. So often women, even when they do seek help, are reluctant to take up, the treatments for menopause. And if you think about it, menopause affects 50% of the population because 50% of the population are women. But it does disproportionately, I think, in terms of the Black and ethnic minority women. They come forward less and seek help for that. A lot of it is fatalistic. Women think, this is my lot and I'm going to have to live with it. And so they put up with some horrendous, symptoms of menopause.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Ali. And it sounds like it is such a huge loss for women in many ways, as you mentioned, and that taboo subject as well, which is something we're trying to bust the myths on tonight. So thank you very much for that insight. We're going to go on to Sister Aamilah now. Sister Aamilah, I want to just start straight up with the first myth that we've heard, which is that women begin the menopause approximately around the age of 50. What do you make of that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. But first of all, I just want to say, Husna, thank you so much for using the words very important. When you started off talking about menopause, it is very, very important. And yes, often it's a myth that I thought was that women who only reach a certain age have their, and then stop their period and then they go into menopause. And that's all I thought it was until I myself, after suffering with endometriosis for over 20 years, in 2019 in June, I had a hysterectomy And even though I kept my ovaries, I went into menopause about 3 months after my hysterectomy and I was quite like, I suppose lucky and blessed because I did a lot of research prior to having my hysterectomy, and I read a medical book. It was a very small abridged book on HRT and hysterectomy, and so I was expecting it that my ovaries may stop functioning and therefore I will go into menopause. And I was like, wow, like I wasn't even, nobody, if I hadn't done my research, nobody would have had that conversation with me to say that because you're not going to have your womb anymore, because as a result of a hysterectomy, your womb, your uterus is being removed. And as a result of that, there's a possibility and the function of your ovaries will stop and therefore you'll go into menopause. And then because of the kind of work that I've been doing with the Endometriosis Foundation, and supporting them once I got diagnosed with endometriosis, and then the work that I do around raising awareness on menopause, I've come across so many women and have learned, and I do this as well on a radio show that I do, that there are other ways that women can go into menopause. And that can be, I mean, I went through it when I had chemical menopause or medical menopause when I had an injection called Zoladex. Some women also have Prostat. And what that did is it shut my ovaries down. And as a result, I went into menopause. I've come across, again, the hysterectomy. I've come across women and young girls who have something, the terminology I believe is, but do correct me, Dr. Ali, it's early ovarian dysfunction. So the ovaries stop functioning very early on in a woman's life and they start to go through menopausal symptoms. So that is a myth, and it's one that, you know, I learned the hard way and had to break that, and also to women around me, because I often get women who say to me, you're too young to be in menopause. And I'm like, because I've had a hysterectomy. And then they're like, well, how and why? And then I have to go into this almost biological explanation and scientific explanation behind, hold on, this uterus that we hold, when it's no longer there and the ovaries are no longer there, or the ovaries have stopped functioning, we will go into menopause. And that demonstrates that a lot of women don't understand, even when they're going into natural menopause, why that happens, what the function of the ovaries actually are in our body.
Yeah. And what a journey that has been for you, Sister Aamilah. You know, I can really hear how much that's been an agent of change for you to support other women out there who have that lack of awareness. And I can hear it's been a real emotional strain on you as well, hasn't it?
It has been. It's been by far the most challenging years of my life. And you know, to wake up and think, wow, like why are we not talking about menopause? Why have we not educated each other? Why have our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunties, elderly aunties, why have they not talked about it? Like, why haven't we been prepared for this? Because all women are going to go through menopause. That's 100% of us. It's not even like a small percentage go through it. It's not, you know, it's like 100%. Young girls who will become women who will become, you know, go into become elderly and go through menopause, or even whether it's those other reasons that I shared earlier, just taking the fact that all women will eventually go through menopause. Why didn't we know anything about it? And I really had to learn the hard way, and I really had to advocate for myself, and I really had to fight with the system to be heard and to be able to get that diagnosis of surgical menopause and then be put on the right treatment. And then when you came to treatment, it was like all these terminologies and things being thrown at me, and I didn't have a clue, and I had to educate myself.
Yeah. And how inspiring that is, Sister Aamilah. Just hearing you speak about it now, I can tell it's just been extremely life-changing for you. And like you mentioned, it is an inevitable transition that every woman will go through. So thank you for sharing your inspiring story. I want to move on to Dr. Ali and I guess present a new myth that we sometimes hear people saying, and that is that you'll put on a lot of weight when you go through the menopause. Dr. Ali, how true do you feel that is?
It's not entirely down to menopause, but it is the fact that as you get older, your metabolism decreases. And certainly it takes a big shock at the time of menopause as the estrogen levels go down. That brings us to, so we kind of discussed the symptoms of menopause and what we should be aware. I'm just going to, because I think some of your viewers are Bengali. So menopause হচ্ছে যখন মহিলাদের বয়স হয় 45 থেকে 55 এর মধ্যে মহিলাদের পিরিয়ড বন্ধ হয়ে যায়। কিছু মহিলাদের এর আগেও হতে পারে। এই সিম্পটমস গুলো হচ্ছে যে পিরিয়ড বন্ধ হয়ে যায়, মুড সুইংস হয়, তারপরে হট ফ্ল্যাশেস, হঠাৎ করে আপনি ফিল করবেন যে আপনার পুরো শরীর মানে একদম গরম হয়ে আসছে, ঘেমে যাচ্ছেন, তারপরে স্লিপ ডিস্টারবেন্স হয়, আপনার পুরা শরীরে ব্যথা, মানে জোড়ায় জোড়ায় ব্যথা হয়। এই সিমটমস গুলো হচ্ছে মেনোপজের সিমটমস। আমাদের কমিটি অনেকে এই সিমটমস গুলো নিয়ে বেঁচে থাকে কিন্তু কোনো হেল্প চায় না। এটা খুবই ইম্পর্টেন্ট যে আপনি আপনার ডাক্তার অথবা ফ্যামিলি কারোর সাথে শেয়ার করবেন, জিপির কাছে যাবেন, এবং যদি আপনার যদি সিমটমস গুলো ক্লিয়ার কাট থাকে, আপনার ওই এজ গ্রুপের মধ্যে হয়, তাহলে তো কোনো ব্লাড টেস্ট করার প্রয়োজন না, আপনাকে বিভিন্ন ধরনের HRT আছে যেটা ট্রিটমেন্ট। সো those are the symptoms of menopause. What can we do about it? There's a lot we can do about it. So apart from the fact that, you can, number one, a healthy lifestyle is really important. So it's really important, even if you haven't been partaking in exercise regularly, at menopause, it's really important that you do regular exercise to keep your bone health and bone strength and muscle strength up, because once the estrogen goes down, you are also more prone to osteoporosis, which is like brittle bone, and that can cause a lot of aches, and then you become more susceptible to fractures. So daily exercise is absolutely crucial, whether you go walking or swimming, whatever you like doing. A healthy eating lifestyle, so eating your 7 portions of fruit and vegetables, making sure that you're getting your vitamins, you're getting your regular proteins, and not too much carbohydrate. And then in terms of medicine, there is a lot. So HRT can come in many forms. So you may discuss each person, each woman will have different needs. It's important that you discuss it with your GP, and they will tailor that to you. So you may choose to go on tablets, estrogen tablets. If you have a uterus, then you will have to have a tablet that has, estrogen and progesterone. If you, like Sister Aamilah, have medical menopause, for some reason you have to have a hysterectomy, then you will need to, you don't need to have the progesterone. So HRT can be in tablet form, it can be gel, it can be in patches, but if you find that you don't get along with HRT, because some women don't tolerate it, in that case, there are other medicines that can help with different symptoms. So clonidine is a blood pressure tablet that we can prescribe for hot flashes, because that's one of the commonest symptoms that causes a lot of distress. Imagine, as a woman, I'm going through menopause, and you're sitting in a room and you're conducting a meeting with, your clinical fellows, and they're all men, and you're suddenly drenched in sweat, and you've become red. It is so embarrassing, and you just feel as if the floor could open up and swallow you. And these are medical people. But to have that happen in a crowd is just horrible, and it does happen. And this can happen quite a lot during the day and nighttime, and causes a lot of sleep disturbance. So if you, for some reason, cannot tolerate HRT, or some women get very concerned about the side effects, there are side effects such as developing clots. You may not be of that, or breast cancer. Then there are other things that we can discuss to treat, and antidepressants play a role in that, because many women have horrible mood swings and can develop depression as well. It is the most trying time in a woman's life, and these symptoms are something that you live with 24 hours, and women have to live with these symptoms, look after their family, do their job, and put on a happy face. It's impossible. But most women don't come forward. The few that actually come and get to see a consultant or a GP, are the small numbers. It's the numbers that don't come to a doctor that is at large. And there is some good news on the horizon, because if you look at women's health and the things that there are diseases or illnesses that are women specific, quite a few. So menopause is one of them. Sister Aamilah, unfortunately, suffered with endometriosis, which is another common illness that women suffer, and very poorly diagnosed by the health service. It can take a woman with endometriosis up to 6 years for her GP to diagnose it. And endometriosis, the pain and the suffering is akin to cancer. It's a condition where the women, cells of the uterus grow outside of the uterus around the surrounding tissues, so the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, and can cause irregular menstrual bleeding and debilitating pain. And often, most of the many of the medicines that we have doesn't actually treat it, and so sometimes you have to resort to a surgical option. And Aamilah is an example. And then you have to contend with just as bad symptoms of a medical-induced menopause. So it's really important that I'm glad that TV1 and Husna has taken the initiative to discuss this, but it's really important that women in the community, in the mosque gatherings, in all our settings, that we actually discuss, this is what happens when you get your period, Milaki. This is what you should expect between 45 and 55, in some cases earlier. And the horrible thing is with menopause, the symptoms can last up to about 12 years or more in some cases.
Yeah, and that sounds like such a long time, isn't it? As you mentioned, Dr. Ali, as well, it sounds extremely debilitating for women, and especially with the many roles that women have to perform and within the South Asian community especially. And thank you for that translation, because I think it's so important, isn't it, to create that awareness and that understanding. And you touched on the symptoms there, and I think there is another myth around the hot flush being the first symptom, but from what you've said, it sounds like actually it's different for different women.
Indeed.
And I'm wondering, sorry, Doctor, just on that, because, and I guess with Sister Aamilah, she could maybe talk to us through her experience as well, but with creating more awareness, because you say there's only a fraction of women that will attend their GP practice and speak to them about it, what more do you feel could be done to I guess, create that awareness or promote women to look after themselves a bit more in this way? So, yeah, Dr. Ali, if we start with you, and then we'll get we'll get Sister Aamilah's viewpoint on that as well.
I think we need to have openness, and I think that's the only way we can actually dispel the myths. So what we need to do is we need to take our message and our, if you like, what the actual facts are. So it's important because a lot of the time women, obviously the pandemic affected all of us, and we're not doing all the usual things that we do, but there's, women do have women's, groups and circles. We have meetings in the mosques, where we have Islamic teachings. And I think menopause and menarche and women's health should be discussed and what to look forward to, because the problem is the myth, because, it is, if you go back to when I grew up, I'm quite old now, my granny, my daddy, or nanny, it was something they would not talk about. It was seen as taboo. It almost, my, sort of recollection of that time, it's almost something dirty that you had to keep the men folk and prevent them from sort of having any knowledge of that. And, you just get on with sort of keeping yourself sanitary. But it's important that, the education has to be of society at large. It can't just be women. Women don't live in silos on their own. Women are part of the family. And I think the education has to happen for both men and women so that we can detect it early and support. A man should be able to support his wife. A son should be able to support his mother going through that, because it is, it affects all part of you, isn't it? You're getting the symptoms, the hot flashes, the aches and pains, the mood swing, the loss of sleep, and many times that women also, we have in our communities we do have some women don't speak English. It's a language barrier, so they're reliant upon family members to give the history, and if they have no understanding what they're giving the history, a woman going through menopause can be simply diagnosed as somebody past, is having just merely depression, and so the actual root cause of the problem isn't solved. So solutions are to talk about it more openly, more transparently, without attaching the word, dirty, bleed, stopping bleeding, mustn't let the men folk, know about it. Because sometimes, as a GP on a day-to-day basis, I think the only time men are aware that women have a period or what they have to live with is when we go to Hajj, when we have to postpone the period. And that's probably the only time maybe they're brought into that. Knowledge, and the rest of the time we just cope our own. Yeah. So I think we just have to de-taboo it, destigmatize the whole thing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Dr. Ali, and I think, like you said, it is very much a taboo subject, and you mentioned that support, and I just want to quickly go to Sister Aamilah with regards to her experience and what she felt like the support that she received. So we've just got a couple of minutes before we go to a break, Sister Aamilah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh my gosh, Dr. Ali has just said so much, and it just excites me that we're having this conversation, because, even if we help one woman who's listening today, alhamdulillah, that's going to be an amazing, amazing achievement. When you're talking about the fan, I relate. I have a mini fan. I take it out in my meetings, and it gives me the opportunity to start the conversation around menopause with all my fellow colleagues, including the men. Now, with menopause, I want to just make it very, very clear that there is no shame in menopause. It is from Allah. It's the way we have been created. We are the women who are the bearers of bringing life into this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us very, very special. So when the function of that portal stops, it is from Allah. And there's no shame in menopause. And I just want to say that to women. Your whole life, our whole life, we are someone's daughter, then we are someone's wife, then we are someone's mother. And in that journey of life, we lose our identity. And I find that when you're hit with menopause, you start questioning, well, who am I? What has my life been about? And if you've neglected your health because you've been so busy in the servitude of these roles that society has given us, and you are hit with menopause, this is the time to stop and pay attention to your health, to your body. The challenges that I faced, and I think that the multi-approach is going to break down the challenges that I faced. It's also educating at a community and grassroots level. And I do talks at like madrasas, and I go to, obviously because of COVID, COVID started about less than a year after I had my hysterectomy. So I wasn't long into menopause when it started, but it's using those platforms that are available to us in the community and grassroots. Medical professionals also need to be up to date with menopause, and that's with no disrespect, because I faced so many barriers with endometriosis, and then I faced so many barriers with menopause, and I had my GP laugh at me, telling me that you are not going through menopause. What makes you think you are? And you've got your ovaries, you're just over imagining it. I went away and I did my research. Knowledge is power. I went to the NICE guidelines, which is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines for menopause. And it says, if a woman is presenting with these symptoms, and this is their age, or they've had a hysterectomy, you do not need to do blood tests. You do not do any tests to diagnose them. You get them referred for support around menopause. And I did not know that we have menopause specialists on the NHS. And I was like, wow. So I got seen by an NHS menopause specialist. There are also private specialists available. I travel from Birmingham to Liverpool to see my specialist, and we have a fantastic relationship now. And that was the first time where somebody sat and listened to me and validated what I was going through, listened to what I was going through, and really helped me to understand that this is what's going to be coming through menopause. And that was so empowering for me.
Yeah.
I think we need to educate employers.
Yeah.
Because as women, to be in the workplace with menopause, it's really, really challenging. And there are many employers now, the large employers and the smaller employers, that are adapting menopause policies into the workplace. And in my workplace, I've braved it to go to HR and have a conversation with them to say, look, let's raise awareness on menopause, because the men need to know that their counterparts are going through this, and we need to be able to. It doesn't mean that we're any less capable. It just means that we need to have flexibilities and adjustments so that we can perform to our maximum. And I think more importantly, young girls, educating them as well and talking about menopause.
Yeah.
So, going into schools, going into colleges and having those conversations. And I think the most powerful institute for all of us is our homes.
That's where it begins.
And talking about menopause in the homes and raising awareness on it and understanding it and paying attention when you start to have that knowledge. Like, I didn't know I was going through it until I spoke to a friend who has been through it, through surgical menopause as a result of having a hysterectomy. And when I spoke to her, she said, Aamilah, you're going through menopause.
Wow.
I said, do you think? Even though I knew, I needed somebody to hold a safe space for me and say, first of all, you can turn up here and you can talk about your symptoms and I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to help you to understand, and we can understand together that this is what you could possibly be going through. And without the education, without the knowledge, without the safe spaces, women will continue to suffer with menopause, and they shouldn't. Not in this time and this era, we shouldn't be.
Yeah, and that's so empowering, Sister Aamilah. Thank you so much for that. And I think you're so right. Having that safe space where you don't feel judged and you can really open up and speak about how you're feeling is so important. So thank you so much. What we're going to do now, dear viewers, is we're going to go to a short break, but please do join us again very shortly, where we will be unpacking some more myths around menopause. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers, and welcome back to the second segment of Women Today, where we are discussing myths around menopause. I just want to move on to the next myth that we tend to hear quite a lot about, and I guess I want to ask Dr. Ali about this first. Dr. Ali, how true do you feel it is that if somebody starts their period early, then they will have menopause early, and if you start your period later, then you'll get the menopause later?
It doesn't exactly translate like that, but it can be the case sometimes that early menarche then leads on to early menopause. But it's not always the case.
Yeah, so I guess it differs between person to person.
Indeed, it does, yes.
Yeah. And Sister Aamilah, what do you make of that? Have you come across this myth before?
I've come across so many crazy myths when it comes to women's menstrual cycle and gynecological function. Like, there's so many crazy myths that I've come across. Like, but yeah, and I think, you know, like the mind probably likes to think like that, and that's what we've been sold this narrative by our ancestors, because that's the only thing they could make sense of. But no, I mean, like, you know, menopause can come on at any point. Like, I've got my sisters are starting to go through the period of perimenopause, which is the build-up to the natural menopause. My sisters are fairly young, and they didn't start their periods very young on in age, so I think that throws that myth out. So yeah,
and like you said, it does sound like there are some even more myths that we've not yet come across. I just want to go back to your sister Aamilah earlier, when you were talking about the kind of emotional strain it can have on you. There's a myth that suggests that if you get all the symptoms, you know, you have your menopause, life is never the same, and it is basically all over. What would you make of that?
I mean, I agree with the part that life it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same. And I actually, coming from my own personal experience of having a surgical menopause, and I think, and I want to be corrected on this by somebody else who's been through the natural menopause. A lot of my conversations around advocating on menopause is with women who have had a hysterectomy and as a result gone into menopause. And, you know, I meet with a lot of women that I know personally, women that reach out to me through social media, who I've never met, but we have conversations. And for me, life has never been the same, because I feel like a part of me has been lost, and I've said goodbye to her, and I still seek her every day, but I don't find her. And I seek all the things she used to bring into my life, and I don't find those things either. And it's almost like somebody's switched a light off. And having said that, I've just had a recollection of a conversation that I had with Dr. Rebecca, who's who's a menopause specialist, and it's last year I did a webinar with her, and she says, and I speak to lots of GPs. I talk about menopause on my radio show as well, who have said that they have women who come to them and say, like, it feels like the light has been switched off. So I guess it is the same for women who go into natural menopause. Like, my description of it was, I feel like a stranger in my own life, because I don't know who I am anymore. And I try and find a piece of me and try to connect with a piece of me every day. And that's a really, psychologically, it's a very, very challenging thing to deal with day in, day out. And like Dr. Ali said, like, women go through this 24/7. And, you know, even yesterday I met up with a lady who's now become a friend, who I'm supporting, because she was going through menopause, and she reached out to me through somebody else, and finally we got to meet yesterday, and she said the same thing. And she says, I feel like I'm going through the cycle of grief every day.
Yeah.
And when you open that space up for women to be able to share that, then you're able to understand the depth and the layers of menopause, that it's more than a hot flush. And the amount of times I have women, oh, you must get the hot flushes, and I say, yes, that and so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so powerful, Sister Aamilah. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's such a poignant thing when you mention there that you feel you've lost a huge part of yourself, because I guess it's become this new identity now. And it's interesting you mentioned grief, because it sounded like that. It sounded like almost the stages of grief. And you know, I want to bring Dr. Ali here now as well. And if you can just share some, I guess, some snippets, some stories from women that have come to you and told you about what it's like, and if they resonate with that feeling of grief as well.
Definitely, I think a lot of women not only resonate, grief, and first of all have difficulty acknowledging what's happening to them. Suddenly, this thing that you used to have every month you don't have, and you're no longer of childbearing age. That's a difficult concept to grasp, to understand and accept that actually I can no longer have children. Secondly, women also, those who are married or relations with partners, they'll think, am I attracted to my husband anymore? So much has changed. You do change in terms of some women put on weight, some can lose weight. You're constantly feeling unwell with all the symptoms. Another symptom that I forgot to mention was headache. You can constantly have headaches, and your energy levels are different. So you start questioning how useful you are to your family, your role as a wife, as a mother, as a sister. Having to take a step back. And so you also then you start thinking, well, actually, I've lived 2/3 of my life. If I'm going to about 50, most women at about 51 will have the menopause. Then you think, I've not got that. I've lived more than half my life. That's another thing that you have to contend with men. And if you compare to the opposite sex, to men, they don't have sentinel stages in their life, such as when you start your period, which we call menarche, or when you go into menopause, which, they don't have that. Theirs is one, I'm sure, of course, as a doctor, I know it's not smooth and they do have problems, but not so marked as a woman does. And so it's a lot, it's a big, there are a lot of issues that you have to physically, psychologically, encounter and live with and contend with.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there's definitely a lot there. It's a huge loss, and with the perhaps a lack of understanding from partners and husbands, I can imagine that would put an extra strain on things there. Thank you, Dr. Ali. And you mentioned there that, and Sister Aamilah mentioned earlier as well, but every woman will go through this. There's almost kind of no escape from that. So every woman will go through the symptoms. They will get those terrible nightmarish, time through it. Is there anything that you can sort of say to young women to almost prepare them for what's to come? And I want to ask Sister Aamilah this, because I guess you were speaking from experience earlier, and you also mentioned having more psychoeducation around this topic. Could you possibly shed some light on that, please?
Of course, thank you. That's a really good question. I just wanted to, because you were talking about symptoms before I come to the question, like I learned recently that there's over 50 symptoms for menopause, and I was like, what? That makes sense. But I'm just going to quickly read out my ones that have come to mind now. So I had sinus problems. I had palpitations to the point where I would make my shahada because I thought, this is it, I'm dying. Weight gain. I've gained 14 kgs since June 2019. Tingling sensations running through my legs and over my face, on the skin. Insomnia. Headaches. Fatigue. Earache. Low mood. Low concentration. The concentration span of mine has become very, very short. Memory. So I have like tons and tons of things to do list everywhere now. Aches and pains, and a urine infection that recurs. So that's just to name a few. Now, it's a really good question that you ask, because the advice that I would give to young girls, first of all, young ladies, if you're listening, at any point, enjoy your periods. Because your periods are talking to you. They tell your body when you want to go and have all the junk food and munch, because your body needs it. They tell your body when you need to rest. They tell your body, like, okay, you ain't got a period now and you've got this burst of energy, go and use it, right? And when you start looking into the seasons within the seasons of your period, you've got winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And each of these seasons of our period cycle tell us something. But when you have menopause and you no longer have a period, your body is talking to you, but you cannot for the life of you understand what your body is trying to tell you, because there's no period happening. So when you start now in your young age paying attention to your period and what these things mean and what these seasons are telling you, when is time for rest, when is it time for play, when is it time to just reflect, you will understand these, because my body still goes through those motions, it still goes through those seasons, and I'm learning now to try and understand, okay, now my body's telling me it needs rest, and so I've got to give it rest. Now my body's telling me it's got this burst of energy which will probably last about 48 hours. So let me try and do the things that I need to do in these 48 hours. And so this is where I will say to young girls now, and I say it to my friends and my nieces and anybody, like, enjoy your periods, please. Like, they are so special, and you will only realize how special they are once you get into menopause. And I think, you know, go out there and do the research and speak to specialists, and there's so much more now available in terms of resources. If you're on social media, follow pages that talk about menopause, follow individuals who are talking about their menopause journey, and really stay on top and with understanding. And I would also say pay attention to the older women in your family, like your mothers, your aunties, your grandmothers, and, you know, your community around you who have got women who are going through menopause. Pay attention to them and look at what they're going through, so you can recognize those when it eventually is your turn. So that's the advice that I would give to young girls.
Yeah, and what amazing advice that is, Sister Aamilah. I think, and I like that, the concept of the seasons. You know, that's such an interesting way of looking at it. It's quite visual as well. And when you mentioned about young girls should be enjoying their periods, because it almost sounds like it becomes a different language when you don't have the periods anymore. You know, you're trying to understand what this new concept of menopause is like, but it just sounds like that you were able to somehow attune to the needs of that, and vice versa. So yeah, thank you for that advice, Sister Aamilah. And I just want to move on to Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, I guess the same question for you as well. What advice would you give to young women, or what is there in terms of, from your medical perspective, that one could do more of?
First of all, I'd like to thank Aamilah for the beautiful way that the eloquent way that she's put periods into seasons. I think that's such a fantastic way of putting it. I think people can visualize that. So like Aamilah has already said, I think, you know, your periods give us an external clue as to where our body is going. And when that's gone, I know certainly I'm going through age-related menopause, and I think, you know, Aamilah is going through medical-induced menopause. And certainly, you know, you do have those withdrawal symptoms because you no longer have that, and your body does. There is a change that you can detect, and my patients certainly tell me, you know, when the time of the month that they would have got it, they do face changes in that. Some women tend to become, you know, sort of clumsy. The skin becomes drier, so they do have some clues. I think the most important thing or a woman can do to look after her health throughout a cradle to grave, grave approach is, number one, you must absolutely take regular exercise. That is one of the keys to having a good experience as a woman with all the things that, you know, encompasses whether you're going through, you know, menarche, menopause, and so forth. So, you know, and when I say exercise, I'm not advocating that everybody go and join a gym, because most often when one joins a gym, you end up paying the gym fees. they become richer. You don't actually go because it doesn't fit into your life cycle. What's important, it doesn't matter where you live, whether you live in a palace or you live in a block of flats, you still have outside space. Make that your routine. When you do Fajr Salah, after that, don't go to bed. Don't start having your breakfast. Go out there and say, I'm going to do 20 minutes of rapid walking just around your building. That everybody can do. Or if if it's snowing outside, you can walk up and down your staircase and you can do the same. Just be disciplined and say, I'm going to do it for 20 minutes. So make exercise a part of your routine. Just like you say Salah 5 times a day, make exercise. After each Salah, you could build in chair-based exercises or mat-based exercises. Do it on your prayer mat. Why do you need to go anywhere else? You can do those things. And as you get older, at menopause especially, it's important to keep your muscles supple. So there's so many YouTube videos that people have put out there. It's so much easier now on social media. And you can do those exercises to increase your muscle bulk and your muscle strength, because that certainly does decrease with osteoporosis and your bone pain. So exercise is number one. Number two, eating healthy. You do need to cut out the junk food. It will give you a fast release of energy, but thereafter you're going to feel not very good. So it's important to eat, we now advocate 7 portions of fruit and veg. So, apples, oranges, grapes, some nuts, almonds, peanuts. Try and eat the unsalted version. And then, things like broccoli, cress has gone out of fashion, but actually it's a superfood. It fights, cancer radicals. So we should, eat cress. Lots of, green vegetables and, spinach and so forth. Eating 3 regular meals. It's important not to miss meals, and don't eat not having lots of snacks, because you don't want to give a big increase in, sugar and energy breakdown. So steady does it. So have your breakfast, your lunch and dinner, and sensible snacks in between. Apple is an underrated, fruit. But actually, an apple only has about 60 kilocalories of energy, and it releases the energy slowly. And that's what you want to do, is eat things that release energy throughout the day. So to combat the the tiredness that you feel and the fatigue that you feel with menopause. So your diet is important. Sleep. Now, most of my friends who are going through menopause say I can't get to sleep before 2 o'clock. And that many women find that they have, insomnia, which Aamilah said, it's difficulty going to sleep or, getting to sleep or having good quality sleep. Because when you're younger, you have rapid eye movement. When you have sleep and you've had good sleep and you wake up full of energy. When you get older, sometimes you've been asleep and you actually managed to sleep that night. But you wake up and your brain's been active and you can almost kind of remember in the different times of the night as the night progresses. It doesn't matter. Still make sure that you go to bed, at a certain time, and allow yourself 7 hours. Even if you don't have good quality sleep, the rest is important. There are things that you can help to maximize your sleep. So, not taking exercise, just before you go to bed, watching any kind of action movies, making sure you read, have a glass of milk or some chamomile tea or peppermint. I tend to advise people to steer clear of, hypnotics and sleeping tablets. But if you are absolutely debilitated and things are really bad, you may need a short course of hypnotics, and don't be frightened to ask for it. Sleeping tablets. The fourth thing I would say, that when you have the menopause, talk about it, let your family know, go and see your doctor, go and join, most GP surgeries, before the pandemic, and now they're online. It's important to actually not be frightened. Take up the medicine that is on offer, because some women may just need treatment for 6 months to 1 year. Others may need it longer. But the problem is women are not coming forward. And when they are offered, they're not taking the HRT because they think they're going to develop breast cancer. There's very little chance of developing breast cancer with many of the HRTs, which are transdermal, so you're not getting a big dose, but it will reduce and improve your symptoms, and the risks of side effects are much less than the risk of the actual benefit. So I would say, don't be frightened to take up the treatment on offer. You may need it only very shortly, and the more of us actually look at what's on offer and take it, then you bust the myth and you can get through that, and that's important. I would also say to most women, what I say to my patients is actually, this is a good time. Make sure you take a multivitamin, because the vitamin D, no matter what, we do not get enough good quality or sunlight in this country. So, almost sort of 90% of the population have low vitamin D. You don't need to go to your GP for that. Buy vitamin D. It's 1,000 units in that. It's not that expensive. It's something worthy of spending your money on. Take a vitamin D and a multivitamin. Vitamin D take throughout your life, because women are menstruating, so you do get iron deficient as well whilst you're on your period. So it's important. So I say, very early on, start taking a vitamin D, have a healthy diet. And as you get into your 30s, when your period, some women will get very heavy periods, which become more frequent. Others will get lighter periods, which become infrequent. But the start, these are the perimenopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
So it's important to make sure that you take your supplements as well. Women also experience breast pain. Again, women won't talk about it because it's embarrassing. We've been taught not to talk about our body parts. But mastalgia is what we medically call it. So breast pain. Again, vitamins have a role in that. So a good diet, exercise, evening primrose oil tablets, those things. So I think if you're not sure, make an appointment with your GP, read about it, write down your questions so that you can ask the questions that are bothering you. Discuss it with your mum. She might not know much about it, but she probably knows something about it, having gone through it. At least you will corroborate that you're not going mad, because many of us think, am I going mad? What's happening to me?
Yeah, and I can imagine.
Suddenly all these very, women who do active women who are getting on with their lives at the height of their, 50s, when you're in university, you leave that sort of uncertainty of childhood and whatnot, and suddenly your body doesn't actually listen to you anymore. You think, well, I'm a high-flying woman,
It's a huge change, isn't it? I'm so sorry, Dr. Ali. I do apologise for interrupting you there, but I think that's such invaluable advice you've given our viewers and the young women as well. I'm taking a huge mental note of everything that you've said as well, because I think it's extremely beneficial. And I never realised cress was even in fashion, but hey, I realise that now. And 7 portions of fruit and veg is something that we should aim for. Exercise, getting sufficient sleep. And yes, such great tips from yourself and Sister Aamilah as well. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for tonight, so I have to conclude our discussion. I just want to say a huge thank you to our honourable guests, Sister Aamilah and Dr. Ali. Thank you so much for your time and for all of the amazing, valuable advice you've given our viewers on the myths and facts around menopause. Dear viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you have found it very beneficial, and inshallah see you at the next show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.